I thought I had everything: a successful career, a loyal friend, and the woman I loved. But one night destroyed it all. She chose him, my best friend, the one who betrayed me, the one who tried to kill me. I tried to move on, to forget, but the past won't let me go. She's back in my life, mysterious, broken, with eyes full of regret. But what if this is just another game? Can I ever trust her again? I was 27, and Jake, 26, had been my best friend since we were 16. What brought us together was our shared ambition. We both chased the same career dream. After years of struggle and countless rejections, my career had finally started to gain momentum over the past year. Meanwhile, Jake wasn't as lucky. I spent a lot of time helping him, especially in the last year, trying to support and motivate him. From ages 20 to 23, we were more than just friends. We were roommates, practically family, sharing everything. But about 6 months ago, his attitude toward me changed dramatically. He started throwing sarcastic jabs, making belittling comments. I brushed it off, chalking it up to frustration and jealousy. I understood this industry was brutal, full of rejection, and watching your best friend succeed at something you dreamed of could be soul-crushing. I was also in a relationship with Sophie, 26. We'd been together for 5 years, and I genuinely thought we were perfect for each other. We communicated well, had a great sex life, and she had been my rock during the toughest years of my career. I shared everything with her, believing we had no secrets and that we were completely honest with one another. I made sure to keep our relationship exciting: dates once or twice a week, spontaneous surprises, gifts, trips, even cooking and dance classes together. She was my priority, and I thought she felt the same way. Even when my career took off, I never put her or my friends in the back burner. Last week, we were at a gathering at our friend's house, Tom and Kate, both 27, who had just bought a home. Also, there were Bill, 26, and Jane, 27, friends of ours for the past 7 years. We were drinking in the backyard, chatting, laughing. Then Jake got drunk, fast. For months, I had tolerated his passive-aggressive bullshit, but that night, he went all in, taking cheap shots at me, disguising insults as jokes. After 6 months of this, I snapped. Others noticed too, and told him to knock it off, but he kept pushing. By midnight, slightly drunk myself, I lost it. I called him out on his jealousy, told him it wasn't my fault he didn't have the talent to make it, and reminded him of everything I'd done to help him. That was it. He lunged at me. We shoved each other until he knocked me down. Then he kicked me in the ribs, twice. Before I could react, he raised his foot to stomp on my head. I managed to roll away, but his boot scraped my cheek, leaving it swollen. He tried again, but I barely dodged in time. His heel slammed into the ground inches from my face. If he had hit me, he could have caved in my skull. That's when the others jumped in. I scrambled to my feet, shouting that he had lost his damn mind. Jake backed off, acting like he was leaving. Then he grabbed a wooden plank from the unfinished fence Tom and Kate were building and came at me again, swinging for my head. I ducked, raising my arm, and his strike landed hard on my elbow. The impact sent a sharp pain up my arm, but if I hadn't blocked it, he could have killed me. When he swung again, he nearly hit Jane, which sent everything spiraling out of control. Tom and Bill lost it. They tackled him, beating him senseless in a blind rage. The girls had to pull them off him before they went too far. Jake sat there, bloodied but conscious. Sophie sat next to him. Kate took Jake to the hospital and didn't return until morning. He had a broken nose and a mild concussion. After the doctors patched him up, she drove him to his parents' house. She told us later that he barely spoke, never explained himself, and most importantly, never apologized. None of us slept that night. The shock, the alcohol, the adrenaline, everything blurred together. But just when I thought the night couldn't get any worse, it did. You may have noticed I hadn't mentioned Sophie in a while. As we sat in stunned silence, Tom muttered, "Jake deserved worse than a broken nose after trying to kill you, twice, and almost hurting Jane." That's when Sophie exploded. She jumped to Jake's defense, yelling that he didn't deserve this, that he was just going through a rough time. Tom snapped back, and for a second, I thought they were going to start screaming at each other. Instead, Sophie stormed out of the room. I followed, thinking, okay, we're all in shock, we haven't slept. She's just overwhelmed. I found her in the guest room, crying. I sat beside her and tried to comfort her, telling her we'd all been through hell and maybe we just needed some sleep. She didn't even look at me. Then, it hit me. Last night, when Jake was attacking me, Sophie had been sitting next to him, and it wasn't the first time. Emily was right there with him, holding his arm, begging him to take a walk and calm down, focusing on him, not me. Even after Jake kicked me, after he tried to stomp my head in, after he swung a plank at me, her priority was still to soothe him. While I lay there, hurting, she never even checked on me. But when the guys finally snapped and fought back, beating Jake down, she screamed in hysteria, trying to pull them off. Not once do I remember her asking if I was okay. So I asked her straight up, "Are you cheating on me with Jake?" She broke down, sobbing, shaking, saying over and over that she never wanted things to go this far. And that was all the answer I needed. I lost it. I started yelling, demanding to know what was going on, how she could do this. The others rushed in, dragging me into another room, trying to calm me down. Jane and Kate took Emily to her parents' house, with Jane staying behind to watch over her. Emily was a wreck, the entire car ride crying so hard she could barely breathe. When they arrived, her dad and Jane had to help her upstairs, put her to bed. She could barely stand. The only thing she managed to say no to scream was that she had ruined everything. Her parents were in shock. They had never seen her like this. After Jane and Kate explained what had happened, how Jake had attacked me, how it all seemed to revolve around an affair, they were horrified. That was 5 days ago. I'm still dealing with the aftermath physically and emotionally. My elbow is fractured, my ribs are bruised, and the right side of my face is still swollen. That night plays in my head on repeat. I had texted Emily a few times, asking for an explanation. No response. Then, this morning, her mom called. Her parents were always good to me, kind, supportive, genuinely great people. She apologized for her daughter, said she understood how I felt. Then she told me Emily wanted to see me, to talk. She asked if I could come over. I agreed. When I arrived, they stepped outside, waiting in their car to give us space. But they didn't want to leave entirely, not after the state Emily was in. I walked in and saw her, and I felt everything. Anger, bitterness, and then pity. She looked awful. She hadn't eaten, hadn't showered, hadn't slept since that night. And despite everything, despite the rage twisting inside me, I just wanted to hold her. But I didn't. Instead, I sat across from her. She told me I could ask anything, and she would be honest. Then she started sobbing again, saying how sorry she was, how she had ruined everything. I won't drag this out with every detail, but in short, Jake confessed his feelings for her a year ago. And ever since, he had been relentless. She claimed she had made it clear she didn't feel the same. I asked, "Then why didn't you tell me?" She said she didn't want to ruin our friendship. She thought she could handle it. Over the past few months, he had gotten more aggressive, pressuring her to leave me for him. I asked, "Did anything happen between you two?" She admitted they kissed. Twice. Both times, Jake initiated it. She claimed she stopped him. They had also watched a movie together, once cuddled up on the couch. Jake tried to take it further, but she pulled away and set boundaries. I asked, "Then why the hell did you keep meeting up with him? If he was constantly trying to push things further, why were you alone with him?" She swore he always promised it wouldn't happen again. I asked, "Then why didn't you cut him off? Why did you keep texting him, meeting up, giving him false hope? Did you like the attention?" And then she said something that made my skin crawl. She told me she felt sorry for him, that she felt responsible for him like an older sister. What the actual fuck? She claimed she had just wanted to help him through a rough time. She had even tried setting him up with a friend, but he ruined it with his shitty behavior. I asked, "Are you seriously that naive? Did you really think your support wasn't just feeding his obsession?" She cried harder. She kept saying their relationship was like siblings, that she only wanted to fix things, to help him get back on his feet. But Jake became more and more demanding, more bitter, started talking shit about me, saying I didn't deserve her. She kept apologizing, calling herself stupid, saying she made everything worse but that her intentions were good. She never realized she was just making it all worse. Then I asked, "Have you talked to him since that night?" She hesitated, and then she broke completely. She sobbed, shaking, but nodded. And that destroyed me. This man had been chasing her for years. He had tried to kill me, and I had waited 5 days for a response from Heronley to find out she had already been talking to him. I had nothing left to say. I didn't want to hit her, but I did want her to hurt. So, I just stood up and left. Emily begged me to stay, offered to show me the messages, swore that she had only reached out to check on him, then told him it was over, and that he should never contact her again. But for me, the damage was already done. While I was living through the worst moment of my life, she still chose to speak to him. I walked out. She followed. And I'm not proud of this, but when her parents got out of their car, asking if everything was okay, I lost it. I snapped. I shouted, swearing that their daughter had destroyed my life, that she had chosen a man who tried to cave my skull in over me. I was so furious I couldn't even bring myself to drive. I just kept walking, no idea where I was going. At some point, Emily's father pulled up beside me and told me to get in the car. I expected him to yell at me, to tell me I was out of line. But bless his hearth just drove me home. Neither of us spoke the entire ride. But when he pulled up to my place, he put a hand on my shoulder. I couldn't even look him in the eyes after everything I had just said to his daughter. Later, Emily sent me screenshots of her messages with Jake. On the surface, they backed up what she had told Meshe, asked how he was, then told him she couldn't have contact with him anymore. She even wrote that she would never forgive him for attacking me. She also included older messages. Most of them were her rejecting him, telling him she didn't have feelings for him, asking him to stop. But considering they had been talking for over a year, she could have easily cherry-picked the messages that made her look better and left out the ones that didn't. I haven't replied. Probably won't. I want to block her. But for some reason, I haven't yet. I feel betrayed, angry, like a horrible person. I want Emily and Jake to suffer. I want them to feel the same pain I do. And I know that's not healthy. I'm hoping that by just writing all of this down, even if no one reads it, I can start to make sense of what happened. My life had felt close to perfect. Now, it feels like I'll never be happy again. This pain feels endless. How do you even begin to move on from something like this? I feel like I've lost everything. The people I loved most now only bring me hatred. Emily insists she never physically cheated, and maybe that's true. But I'm not an idiot. Even if there was no sex, she still betrayed me just like Jake did. I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive them. And I can't even imagine a version of myself that would want to try. So if anyone has ever been betrayed like this by both a partner and a friend, what do I do now? Where do I even start to move past this and get my life back? Update. I need your advice again. A lot of you asked for an update, so I'll summarize without dragging things out too much. My main question is at the end. Jake, many of you said I should press charges. Maybe that's because a lot of you are American and believe too much in the justice system, or maybe you just watch too many legal dramas. But that's not how it works here. I spoke to 2 lawyers. Yes, I can file a report, but the chances of Jake going to jail are slim. The most likely outcome? He'd have to pay court fees, and financial compensation may be a significant amount, maybe not. Since I didn't sustain serious injuries, the judge would focus on the actual harm done. My friends could testify that Jake attacked me, but the reality is, the court would probably just give him probation. Sure, I could ruin him financially, but he could also file a counterclaim against Tom and Bill. And for them, the consequences would be worse because they broke his nose and gave him a concussion. A lawsuit could drag on for months, maybe years. And honestly, I just want this to be over. Jake's reputation is already wrecked. He's lost some friends, though others chose to stay neutral. His older brothers said their parents were disappointed in him, but that's about it. His younger sister, though, she took it hard. She used to joke that I was like her older brother. She also adored Emily. After this, she cut Jake off completely. Jake sent me a long letter apologizing, but he never mentioned Emily. Not once. He only apologized for attacking me, for his behavior. His apology felt sincere. He took responsibility for a lot. But of course, he also blamed some of it on his mental health issues. I didn't respond. I won't. Jane and Kate. Some of you suspected Jane and Kate knew more than they let on, or that they were even covering for Emily. So I decided to play dumb and casually ask if they had noticed anything strange between Jake and Emily. Turns out, yeah, they knew. They knew Jake had kissed Emily. But they claimed they didn't realize how bad things had gotten. They told me they only knew that Jake and Emily had been spending time together and that Emily had mentioned he kissed her but assured them she had handled it. I didn't fully believe that was all they knew, especially when Jane got defensive when I pressed her with more questions. That set off a chain reaction. Tom got mad at her for keeping it from him, started suspecting she was hiding even more, and the relationship took a hit because of it. I tried not to get involved, but I told Tom not to be angry with her because of me. Kate, on the other hand, came to my house to talk. She said she truly knew nothing, that she had only overheard a conversation about Jake and Emily later. When she asked Jane about it, Jane told her Emily had handled it. Kate swore she had taken that to mean Emily had told me everything, and that was the end of it for her. I believed her. She seemed genuine, apologetic. Unlike Jane. I don't hate Jane. I'm not even angry at her. But I'm disappointed in her, so for now, I've cut off contact. I just don't feel the need to speak to her. It's affected my friendship with Tom a little. I've been spending more time with other people. Emily. A lot of people advised me to cut her off completely. But I know myself. I would have lost my mind if I hadn't had the chance to get closure, to understand how everything had happened. Someone told me that facing problems head-on is the only way to move forward, and that resonated with me more than ghosting her. Even though I had planned to cut her off after our last conversation, I still needed to apologize to her parents. And I needed to pick up my car, which was still parked at their house. So 4 days after the last incident, I called them and asked if I could stop by, talk to them, and see Emily. They actually sounded happy to hear from me. I got the feeling they thought I was going to forgive her or something. When I arrived, we talked. I apologized. They admitted they were hurt and shocked by the things I had yelled at them, but they understood I had been overwhelmed and in a dark place. We hugged. Then, just like last time, they left the house to give me space to talk to Emily. She was waiting for me in the living room. She walked toward me with the saddest expression I had ever seen, asking me to hold her. I refused. I told her to sit down. We needed to talk. I asked her to tell me everything again. And I asked, was Jake abusive in any way? Jane and Kate had hinted at it before. She repeated what she had already told me but added new details. She admitted that, back then, she hadn't fully realized the situation. She thought it was all her responsibility to fix. But the reason she never told me was because Jake threatened her. He told her he would tell me himself that they had kissed, that they were in love, that she had cheated, that he would ruin our relationship, that he would make me believe him, not her. She felt cornered, like she had to handle it on her own. I asked, "Did he ever physically hurt you?" She hesitated, then said, "Not exactly, but there were 2 times when he had hurt her. Once, at a party we both attended, he pulled her aside and asked if she really didn't love him. When she said no and tried to leave, he grabbed her wrist, held on too tightly, and yanked her closer. It hurt." I suddenly remembered that night. At some point, she had gone quiet, distant. But when I asked, she just said she was tired. The second time was similar, but they had been alone. He had squeezed her arm so hard it left bruises, but I never saw bruises on her. I would have noticed. I would have asked. Maybe she hid them. I asked, "Are you telling me the truth? That there was no physical intimacy?" His intentions were obvious, so why did you keep putting yourself in that position? She just said, "I don't know." That she had been stupid, but she swore there was never any physical relationship. I asked, "Why did he have so much control over you? Why couldn't you find the strength to tell me the truth for an entire year? Why did you think I'd believe him over you?" She said she didn't know, that she just kept making mistakes. I asked, "Then why did you ignore me after he attacked me but kept talking to him?" She started crying, repeating that she didn't know. She thought our relationship was strong enough to survive this. She was more worried about what Jake would do. That's what hurt me the most. She was more concerned about him than me. For me, that meant she had chosen him. She blew up, saying she never chose him. But I stood my ground. To me, that's exactly what it looked like. I explained how deeply she had hurt me, how she and Jake had completely shattered my trust, that our relationship was over. She asked if there was any chance that, someday, we could be a part of each other's lives again. I told her no, But something didn't sit right with me. There were still too many missing pieces in her story. So I decided to reach out to Sarah Emily's best friend. I told her I was completely broken, that I felt like no one around me was telling the truth, and I begged her to be honest with me. To my surprise, she answered. Turns out, she knew quite a lot, but even she had been kept in the dark about certain things. She had known about Jake. She had begged Emily to cut contact with him and to tell me about his behavior. She had known about their kisses and she told me Emily regretted them, that she stopped things before they went further. Then she told me something that completely shocked me. At the beginning of all of this, Emily liked feeling needed. She liked the dynamic in our relationship when I had been the one struggling when I needed her support. When I was facing rejection after rejection in my career, she was the one who picked me up, held me, motivated me, made me believe in myself again. Not that I was always a mess or financially dependent on her, but she had been my rock in the tough moments. But when my career took off, that dynamic disappeared. And then Jake ended up in the same place I had once been. And that made Emily feel needed again. I was speechless. Sarah said she had been just as stunned when she found out. I asked, did Emily feel needed because Jake wanted her? Sarah hesitated then, said Emily had never admitted that, but knowing her for 20 years, she suspected that did play a role. Then I asked the question I had been most afraid of. Maybe I had been naive. Maybe I wasn't as good of a boyfriend as I thought. Had Emily ever talked badly about me? Had I, in some way, pushed her toward Jake? Sarah said, not exactly. Emily always said she loved me. She constantly talked about how happy she was, how I made her feel special. Sarah had even envied her sometimes. But occasionally, Emily had said I could be too controlling, that I was sometimes clingy, that I could be distant or selfish at times, but nothing beyond that. Since then, I noticed Sarah started acting different. She texted me every day. At first, she just asked how I was feeling. Then she started sending memes. Then memes with suggestive humor. I had no interest in her, so I knew I needed to shut this down before she thought I was encouraging it. A week ago, I finally cut off contact with Emily. I blocked her on everything: social media, messaging apps. We had always communicated through those platforms, so we rarely used phone numbers. Maybe I just forgot about her actual number. Or maybe, deep down, I left it unblocked on purpose. Because then she texted me, "How are you?" Then, for the first time in a long time, I smiled. I laughed. "Thanks to you." She sent a photo of her TV with my face on it. She wrote how proud she was of me, how she couldn't wait to see me succeed. I work in entertainment. My big break happened last year. I used to work behind the scenes, but now I've started appearing on camera. I'm not famous, but the small show I'm on is gradually growing. I made a mistake, I answered. We talked for 2 days. Not about us, but about the political situation in the country. I kept my distance. I only responded when I felt like it. Then she asked me again, "Will you ever let me be a part of your life again, even in the smallest way?" I told her I needed more time, but that it was unlikely. Then I added I couldn't keep talking to her. For my own mental health, I said goodbye. And I blocked her. I thought that was the end of it. Then, last Friday, at midnight, there was a knock at my door. Emily stood there, soaked to the bone, standing in the rain, like some dramatic scene from a movie. I stared at her. "What the hell are you doing here?" She said she had been at a bar, drinking. She had wanted to see me but got scared as soon as she stepped out of the taxi, so she stood outside for 10 minutes, until she got too cold to wait for another cab. I let her in. I gave her old sweatpants, a t-shirt, and a hoodie, packed her wet clothes in a bag. She told me her friends had insisted on taking her out for a girls' night, even though she wasn't ready. She went anyway. They were drinking. She ordered her favorite cocktail, the one she always got when we were together. We used to spend nights out apart sometimes, but we had a tradition texting each other all evening. Sending jokes, sharing funny stories, snapping pics of our drinks. We were that couple. The one always texting each other, even while apart. So out of habit, she reached for her phone to send me a picture. Then it hit her. She would never be able to do that again. And suddenly, a wave of sadness crushed her. She drank more. And then, despite telling her friends she wasn't interested in meeting anyone, they invited guys over. One of them was told she was single. He started flirting with her, trying to get her attention. Her friends kept setting up situations to leave them alone together, and she snapped. Emily also told me that the guy at the bar was boring, unattractive, pathetic. She rarely talked about people like that, and that's when I realized she was somewhere between lightly and moderately drunk. Normally, at that stage, she'd be cheerful and chatty. But this time, she was completely cold, distant. She never once looked me in the eyes. It was different from our last meeting. Back then, her eyes had been filled with sadness and regret. Now, her voice was almost monotone. I had never seen her like this before. It felt like I wasn't even talking to Emily, just a shell of her. I was exhausted, mentally drained. My thoughts shut down. She just sat there in silence. I opened a taxi app to call her a ride, but after 15 minutes, no cars were available. At that point, I just thought, fuck it. I told her I'd drive her home. I didn't want her staying at my place, and I suspected that was her plan, but I wanted to see if she'd resist when I made it clear I wasn't letting that happen. She didn't argue, didn't try to stay. She just took her things and walked to my car. No hesitation, no excuses. The drive was just as distant. At one point, she asked if she could pick the music. I said sure. Then she asked, "Can I hold your hand? Just one last time?" Like an idiot, I said yes. She just sat there, staring out the window, never looking at me. Her behavior confused me. Trying to break the tension, I awkwardly joked, "I could always take you back to your friends. Maybe Mr. Pathetic is still there." She just shrugged. "I'm done with men. Forever. They just break my trust, manipulate my emotions, take advantage of my kindness, and put me in impossible situations." I wasn't sure if she was talking about me, Jake, or both of us. I asked, "Why do you feel that way?" She just shrugged again and said, completely serious, "Because it's true." Then she told me Jake had sent her a letter. He had asked her to move with him to another country. She said she threw it away, then silence again. As we neared her parents' house, I felt her hand squeeze mine like she didn't want to let go. When I pulled up, she didn't say anything. She just got out, didn't look at me, didn't say goodbye, just walked inside. When I got home, I found her underwear in my bathroom, not in the laundry bin next to it where clothes sometimes fall. Common sense tells me she left it there on purpose. She knows where clothes land when they slip. Now, I have her underwear, and she has my clothes. A perfect excuse to meet again. I was completely thrown off by Emily's state that night. It even crossed my mind that she might have been on something. She was that different. For a second, I considered asking Sarah about it, but I didn't want to drag her into this mess any more than she already was. Then, like the fool I am, I unblocked Emily everywhere, because I genuinely believed she would text me an apology for showing up drunk at my place. Old Emily definitely would have. Instead, I noticed something else. Her Instagram had changed drastically. She deleted almost everything. Her bio was gone. Her profile used to be cute, full of personality. Now it was just 2 old photos. All the pictures of her with other people, gone. Almost all the pictures of me, deleted. Except for one, a photo from a trip we took 2 years ago. We both used to say it was the happiest trip of our lives. I thought I had started moving forward, but now, I can't stop thinking about her again. The truth is I miss Emily badly. She is genuinely a unique person. I always knew how lucky I was to have her in my life. And despite spending this past month hating her, resenting her, when I saw her on Friday, when I remembered how she had sobbed at her parents' house, I realized something. I hate seeing her like this. At one point, I thought seeing her suffer would make me feel better. But now, I'm more worried about her than I am angry. I'll admit it, when she squeezed my hand in the car, I felt butterflies. For a brief moment, I remembered our happy times. And then, right after, I felt dread. I don't want her to destroy herself. I don't want her to spend the rest of her life consumed by guilt. We're all human. We make mistakes. And the more I think about it, the more I believe Jake was abusive. Which makes me wonder, should I take legal action against him? To hold him accountable for what he did to both of us? But then I remember when everything fell apart, she comforted him, not me. I keep replaying that moment over and over again. And her visit on Friday felt slightly manipulative. Showing up drenched in rain, leaving behind her underwear, acting so off. But then, for a few minutes, I don't even care. And I just want her back in my life. I'm lost. Do I cut contact completely, be strong, move on? Do I reach out, talk to her honestly, try to work things out, see if there's still a chance?